The views expressed on the following broadcasts do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT, Take 12 Radio, or our affiliates. The opinions on this show should not be considered as medical, psychological, or professional advice and are those of the host, co-host, and guest. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
One day at a time with its failures and fears, with portion of pain and burden of care, we must meet.
Welcome to Walking Through the Language of the Heart, a journey into the grapevine writings of Alcoholics Anonymous co-founder Bill W. And now, here are your co-hosts, Chris S. and the Monty'man.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of this broadcast of Walking Through the Book, The Language of the Heart, with our good friend Chris S. Hey, buddy.
Hey, how's it going, Monty?
It's going well. I'm excited about this just because of the title of it. So we'll see where it takes us. So what's the topic and what's the name of the article by Bill Wilson this week?
All right, again, we're reading from the book Language of the Heart. We're on page 315. This is November 1960, Monty, and the title is Freedom Under God. The choice is ours. So let's see what he has to say about this. Could be interesting. In its deeper sense, AA is a quest for freedom. Freedom under God. Of course, the immediate object of our quest is sobriety, freedom from alcohol and from all its baleful consequences. Without this freedom, we have nothing at all. Paradoxically, though, we can achieve no liberation from alcohol obsession until we become willing to deal with those character defects which have landed us in that hapless condition. Even to gain sobriety only, we must attain some freedom from fear, anger, and pride, from rebellion and self-righteousness, from laziness and irresponsibility, from foolish rationalization and outright dishonesty, from wrong dependencies and destructive power driving. You know, I'm telling you, Bill Wilson had to be the first person in the world to connect all of those manifestations of self to long-term sobriety and recovery. There were many methods and many people that were doing many different things, and none of them really were focused on this stuff. But in that one paragraph, he tells us what our job is going to be, Monty.
Yeah.
You know, it's drastic. In this freedom quest, we are always given three choices. A rebellious refusal to work upon our glaring defects can be a ticket to destruction. Or for a time, we can stay sober with a minimum of self-improvement and settle ourselves into a comfortable but often dangerous mediocrity. Or we can continuously try hard for those sterling qualities which can add up to greatness of spirit and action. True and lasting freedom under God, the freedom to find and do His will. So I think he's given us an idea of what he believes freedom is. Freedom to do God's will.
So this sentence, or for a time we can stay sober with a minimum of self-improvement and settle ourselves into a comfortable but often dangerous meeting environment.
you know, Monty, I'm always the controversial bomb thrower.
Are you?
But I would say a vast majority of the fellowship falls into that category.
Yeah.
You know, I fell into that category.
I did too.
I didn't really know any better. I thought, meeting attendance, and every once in a while, pick up the chairs, take somebody to a meeting, keep coming back.
I had fun doing that. We had a URS club, so we had a sobriety club downtown. and with pool table and a library and a coffee corner and meeting rooms for the NA group, meeting rooms for the AA group. It was all the same people. We were having a blast. Hey there. We were having a blast, and I looked forward going down there every day. And if I felt like drinking, thank God I'm going to be down there playing pool soon, And for a while, it worked. For a while.
Yeah, it works right up until it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You can see that in meeting attendance specifics. So, I'll give you, for instance, there's a beginners meeting I've gone to forever and ever and ever. And every single meeting, is there anybody new or coming back? 3 or 4 hands go up. Now, the meeting is about 80 people, maybe 100 people on a Monday night.
Uh-huh.
If every person that raised their hand and says, yes, I'm coming back, I want this thing, if every one of them stayed, we would have to have that meeting in a coliseum after 35 years, right? But that's not what happens. Sure. As people come in, people cycle out. And, my theory is that mediocrity only works until it doesn't work.
Until it doesn't. Yeah. So that whole time that I was playing pool and reading books in the library and doing the coffee service thing, not one time did anybody suggest that I read the big book or do a step. Not once.
It wasn't popular back then.
No.
I've talked to you about what my theories are. I mean, my theories are, in the 80s up until about 1992, it was a free-for-all for treatment centers. There was parity legislation. There was the Hughes Act, and it made it incumbent upon insurance and the insurance industries of all kinds to pay for addiction treatment, no matter what, if the people in the treatment center sent word that this guy needs to be here. So after managed care came in 93, we went from like 100,000 beds to 10,000 beds in the country, like overnight. They just stopped paying for it. So as they stopped paying for it, we stopped getting inundated the way we had been by treatment centers. And treatment centers have all kinds of different ways to, treat you. And much of that, much of that oral tradition ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous. And we started to believe that it was Alcoholics Anonymous. And we started to believe that group therapy was what this whole thing was about, because that's what they did in the treatment centers. They put you in a circle, and it was a discussion meeting, and you talked about what was going on with you. How do you feel today, Monty? How do you feel? And so we started to think that was Alcoholics Anonymous, sitting in a circle talking about how we feel. and mediocrity ensued. That's my theory.
Yeah.
So let's see here. For most of us, this last choice is really ours. We must never be blinded by the futile philosophy that we are just the hapless victims of our inheritance, our life experience, and our surroundings, that these are the sole forces that make our decisions for us. This is not the road to freedom. We have to believe that we can really choose. Similarly, our whole society and every group in it will constantly face these identical decisions. Shall we settle for destruction? Shall we try only for temporary comforts of a complacent mediocrity? Or shall we constantly face the disciplines, make the sacrifices, and endure the discomforts that will qualify us to walk the path that invariably leads toward true greatness of spirit and action? Man, that is a call to action, isn't it, Mike?
It really is. So for those who say, and I often hear it, oh, you AA folks and 12-steppers, you always blame your past and your trauma. You put the blame on that. You don't take responsibility. Well, no, not according to this. We must never be blinded by the futile philosophy that we are just the hapless victims of our inheritance, our life experience, and our surroundings. We must not do that. We must not do that.
you hear every once in a while in a meeting, yeah, I did it again, but I'm an alcoholic, it's my alcoholism. Well, that attitude is not good enough. We must be
No.
striving for continuous improvement. We just have to be.
You hear,
You know,
yeah, you hear somebody say, "I don't know why did I do this again?" And somebody out from the dark corner of the room will say, "Well, you're a drug addict, that's why, or you're an alcoholic,
yeah.
that's why." Oh, okay, thank you.
Oh, that's right.
Now
That's
I'm all
right. Of
better.
course.
I'm all better now.
Yeah, it's not my fault. Unbelievable. These reflections are meant to be background for the theme of this article, the 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. AA's traditions are the yardstick by which our fellowship can accurately measure its progress or lack of it. In our traditions, we see such wisdom as we have been able to muster in a quarter of a century of living and working together. That these principles stake out our path we ought to follow, there can be little doubt. As we contemplate the traditions, we see that they have two main characteristics and that each of these aspects reinforces the other. The first aspect of the 12 traditions is protection. The second aspect is progress. We are first reminded that our fellowship's temptations really are and by what means we may best deal with them. This is our basis for a continuous moral inventory of our collective behavior. The first step is to actively cast aside our roadblocks. In the affirmative or positive aspect of the traditions, we learn both directly and impliedly how we may best apply the high ideals of sacrifice and willing responsibility, trust, and love in our relations with each other and with the world around us. Of these practices flows the spiritual energy that moves us along the road to full liberation. Wow. So as we really try to practice the 12 traditions in our groups, Monty, what happens is spiritual energy flows and moves us along the road of full liberation. We sometimes we wonder, all right, the group conscience manifests itself. God's will manifests itself in the group conscience. Well, how? How? Bill is just telling us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's by our application of these principles. The spiritual energy moves us.
Woven in here, for some reason, I'm reading, it may be time for a group inventory.
Yes. Have you ever done those?
Yes.
I've been part of a group that's done those.
I've been a part of a couple of those.
Until they don't do them anymore because the score is so bad.
They didn't fare real well, I'll tell you the truth.
Man. As we ponder protection, we see that our traditions warn against the perils of public fame and power, against the perils of great wealth, against the making of compromising alliances, against professionalism. We are reminded that we may deny no alcoholic his membership, that we must never create an authoritative government of men. We are cautioned that we should never force AA's message upon the world by aggressive promotional schemes, and that we should shun public controversy as the devil himself. Such are typical examples of the protective prudence which our 12 traditions directly express or clearly imply. Some claim that these warnings are nothing but the sum of our collective fears. Once upon a time, this was very true. In our first year, every violation of these precepts seemed to threaten our actual existence. We then doubted if our rebellious membership could ever resist its great temptations. But we have resisted, and so we have survived. Therefore, the stark fears of yesterday have since given way to a vigilant prudence, something quite different from unreasoning panic. To a degree, I see that that's true. Many groups, Monty, almost instinctively follow specific traditions. Now, not always, and there are some traditions that get broken in certain groups, but we don't have to go to tradition meetings like we have to go to big book or step meetings to understand that this needs to be followed. It almost has become inherent in the fellowship and learned, at least the basics of these traditions.
I think many members today have a sense of what the boundaries are and the guidelines, and they don't even realize that they are the traditions because they've been practiced so much. Like, the only requirement for membership. I mean, lots of people don't even know that that's a tradition. That's part of a tradition. You know what I'm saying? They go, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, look at that. It's right there in writing. I didn't even know that, because we've been doing it so long.
Yeah, but they know that that's true in the meetings.
Yes, absolutely.
Because they've seen it time and again.
Yep.
Of course, we know that we shall always have to deal with the fearful forces which are released when the human ego runs amok. The same forces that are shattering the world of our time. Deliver us from temptation must therefore continue to be a prime ingredient of our every attitude, practice, and prayer. When things go well, we must never fall into the error of believing that no great ill can possibly befall us. Nor should we accuse ourselves of negative thinking when we insist on facing the destructive forces in and around us, both realistically and effectively. Vigilance will always be the price of survival. This is the protective aspect of our traditions, but AA's 12 traditions should provide us with far more than protection against mediocrity and disillusion, and they do. Let's now think about the positive, the progressive side of AA's traditions, the discipline, sacrifices, and responsibilities that we shall need to undertake, the degree of mutual trust and love we shall need to achieve if we are to find the greater freedom we seek. The length of this article will not admit a full examination of all 12 traditions in this respect, but a few examples can serve to illustrate just what we mean. Take tradition 1. It says that AA's common welfare comes first. This really means that our personal ambitions will have to be set aside every time they conflict with the safety or effectiveness of our fellowship. It means that we must sometimes love our society more than ourselves. Tradition 2 states, for our group purpose there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. This is a study in mutual trust in God, in ourselves, and in our service leadership. This has been one of our finest experiments, and it has succeeded far beyond our expectations. Tradition 3 defines the personal liberty of the AA member. It says, in effect, that any alcoholic can be an AA member the moment he says so. Now, notice that it says any alcoholic can be an AA member.
Yeah.
Neither can any of us deprive him of that membership, no matter what his behavior. Perhaps no other society has ever staked out such a broad expanse of liberty for the individual as this. Every AA newcomer feels at once that he is wanted and trusted and loved. How well we understand his needs. Certainly, we have had them ourselves. Seldom has any alcoholic taken unfair advantage of that unlimited charter for freedom. We took this decision for individual freedom years ago. We are glad that we did. There has never been any cause for regret. And I have a particular love for this tradition, Monty, because so many people come into the rooms not really understanding what's going on. And a lot of times they're in more trouble than they think they are. So really, what is the most compassionate response we can have as a group? Come on in, sit down.
Yeah. Welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah.
So I'm all for that.
Do you think, Chris, that so I'll say, let me give you my piece on this. I think determining whether somebody is truly an alcoholic or not is as easy as it ever was. I don't think it's that complicated. But I think there's a perception maybe that it is a lot harder today with all the trauma therapy and everything going on. The way treatment has exploded into so many different arms and kinds of treatment, that for somebody to say, well, I don't know if I'm an alcoholic or not, I'm confused whether I am or not, that it's harder to determine that. And so people don't. They just simply say, well, it says you're a member when you say you are, so I are. Yeah. Do you think it's harder today to make that determination whether somebody's an alcoholic or not?
I do, because in the early days they had somebody qualify you. the first thing that happened was somebody qualified you
Right.
before you even went to meetings.
Right. They don't do that now.
And today, no, somebody shows up at the meeting, everybody leaves them alone. It's live and let live. It's none of my business.
Do you think that's a good call?
What's that?
Do you think that's a good call?
In certain cases, yes. In certain cases, no. In my case, it was well over a year before someone truly qualified me,
Yeah.
truly asked me the right questions. I knew intuitively that I was alcoholic, but if you would have asked me to explain why I'm alcoholic, I would have given you bad reasons. I would have said I drank a lot. I would have said I was a
Yeah.
blackout drinker. I would have said I got DUIs. I would have said I lost my family. And none of those are reasons that you use
Right.
when you're defining alcoholism, because
Right.
there's heavy drinkers that experience all
Experience
those things. So it was only until someone very gave me the basics. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot give up alcohol entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. And you're right. It's that easy to qualify someone.
Right.
Unless they're suffering from delusion, and there's a lot of there's a cloud of unrecovery that a lot of us come in on, and there's things that we just don't understand or see clearly. So yeah, I still think it's a good idea to let people sit around for a while, and I think it's the sponsor's job for qualification.
There it
I
is.
don't.
There it is.
I don't think someone can move forward in Alcoholics Anonymous, without good sponsorship. I just don't.
So
because,
my policy is if you ask me to be your sponsor, somebody asked me this yesterday. It says, you always say yes when somebody asks you. I said, no, I don't. I said, before I can answer that question, I need to find something out from you. We need. Do you know if you're alcoholic? I think I am. Okay, that's not a yes. So let's find out. And so I ask them those vital questions, and they're pretty simple, because if they're not, and we're dealing with something else, I may not have any qualifications to help treat that or help. I don't know what I'm doing in that area, So let me point you in a direction that can be helpful. I mean, if you're, I know a lady. She has an addiction problem that is surrounded by exercise. I mean, she has a compulsivity towards it. It's horrible. I have no idea. I'm the last person you want to ask about over exercise. I haven't got a good. But if you're alcoholic, I can work with you. If you're not, I'm probably not gonna. Just because, the steps are good for anybody. Well, that's nice, but
it's not my responsibility.
No.
Monty, back in the early 90s, I started to qualify people. And a couple of times I qualified somebody, and they were not an alcoholic. And I explained that to them. And, they went back to the meetings. Chris said I'm not an alcoholic. And I got a lot of flack.
I bet you did.
But here's the thing. I think it's important to know, just like you said, if someone isn't, why would they stick with us? We have a solution that fits a common problem. Yeah, it might be a good club for them to go to or whatever, but whatever they're going through may require skill sets that aren't available.
That we don't have
in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so the truth will set you free. There are people that have been in Alcoholics Anonymous for decades, Monty, who are no more alcoholic than the man in the moon. They don't qualify for that very simple. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot give up alcohol entirely because they gave it up.
Yeah,
they just gave it up.
Yeah.
So they don't know. It's not a truth for them that they couldn't stay away from alcohol. They could.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So what are you doing here? I don't throw anybody out, but I let them come to their own conclusion about this stuff. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, it's important.
Tradition 4 is yet another confident declaration of mutual trust and love as it flows from each AA group to the other. We give each group full autonomy the undisturbed right to manage its own affairs. To make this condition doubly permanent and secure, we have guaranteed to all groups that they will never be subjected to any centralized government or authority. In turn, each group agrees that it will never take any action that could injure us all. Rarely indeed has any AA group ever forgotten that precious trust. Tradition 7 proclaims AA's principles of self-support. In it, we undertake to pay every cent of our own service expenses, meanwhile declining outside contributions. The fact that we don't take money from the outside world builds confidence in every alcoholic who thinks of approaching us. This we know. Public goodwill has also been increased because of people like the idea that once irresponsible alcoholics have now become responsible. There is no doubt either that this salutary practice takes us in the direction of increased freedom for ourselves. By resolutely declining outside funds, whether offered by individual donors or by governments, we are making dead sure that we shall always preserve our own liberty of action. Hence the old adage, who pays the piper calls the tune, will never be descriptive of us. You know, it's funny. I'm part of a commitment at a treatment center, and in the early days of this treatment center, they refused insurance payments. They wanted nothing to do with the insurance companies because they didn't want the insurance companies to be influencing any aspect of the treatment that they were giving.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's still some of these self-pay places around,
Right.
and a lot of them are really spiritually oriented, and I think that's very cool because now if you're involved in a normal treatment center, you know, you're being told what to do. You're being told you're going to use medication maintenance. You're being told that
That's right.
you know you got to document everything. You got to write notes on everything. It's you know, onerous if you want to get those checks from the insurance companies. And some of it's valid, some of it makes sense, and some of it is just onerous.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So I worked for a faith-based treatment facility who only took private donations.
Mm-hmm.
They were not going to take any grants from the government. Because as soon as you started doing that, they're telling you what you can teach, you can't teach, and they're putting restrictions on you. And now you have to teach and treat in areas that have nothing to do with a lot of your clients. You know, some of them do, but yeah, it's kind of, once you open that door, get ready, because there's going to be control. But,
it looks great in the beginning.
Yeah.
There's little question that large sums could be raised today for AA. That is, if we ever gave the word.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps no greater calamity could befall our fellowship than such a development. We would be at once absolved from the beneficial responsibility of raising our own funds. With lots of other people's money available, our Idea Minute members would doubtless conceive countless schemes for doing good. In those few past instances where we have taken outside money, distraction and contention within has been the almost uniform result. Therefore, we are well aware that the responsibility for full support brings us great spiritual and practical blessing. This is sacrificial prudence at its best, chief bulwark of our cherished freedoms. So I'll show you where I think this is being mismanaged right now. So being self-supporting through our own contributions went way down during COVID. Went way down. So they started pulling from their prudent reserve. And they're still kind of panicked because they're spending more money than is coming in. Hence, the approval and publication of new literature that we don't need. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of following the heart of this tradition, which would be to downsize services to match incoming contributions like a business would,
Right.
they've decided they want the cash to continue to flow. You know what I mean?
So are you saying,
I see that as a problem.
Are you dare to say, I say tongue in cheek, that the publication of some specific literature that will go unnamed, new literature, could very well be more about cash flow than actually trying to identify with the modern age.
So let's just take one book, one unnamed book. Let's say they make $8 off of it. Well, probably in the first year, 2 million of those books are going to be printed. So that's $16 million. That would cover a lot of the losses for a lot of the years that they're making. And you might see that as a prudent business decision, but it goes against the spiritual principle, I believe, uh, which is if contributions are down, cut the services. They're a lot of them are not as important as everybody is making out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, come on. But that's not what's going to happen,
Stop.
Monty.
Hey, you could start small. Stop printing Living Sober.
Bill says that we don't want to accumulate giant sums of money. It's going to cause problems. So with a $20 million, operating budget every year, what have you done? You've created monstrous amounts of problems for yourself.
Yeah.
So, that's just kind of how I feel. I bet you there's a lot of people that don't feel that way, though.
That's okay.
Another example, Tradition 10 is an emphatic warning against public controversy. This was perhaps the first AA tradition ever to take shape. Of course, we did reserve that sometimes enjoyable right of quarreling amongst ourselves about lesser matters. But when it came to the awful issues that rock society about us, such as politics, religion, reform, and the like, well, the early AAs knew these terrible conflicts were surely not for them. Later on, a new aspect of the same peril came into view. All sorts of people and organizations begged us to take stands, deliver opinions, and fight evils all up and down the line. Again, we instantly saw that if we ever embarked upon such a course, it would certainly be our finish. Drunks by the thousands would be kept away from AA through sheer prejudice. The same old peril would again menace us. This time it would crash in from the outside. This was when we AAs knew for sure that we had to be at peace internally and with the world around us. No doubt mankind has wrung many of freedom out of violent controversy and bitter war, yet we AAs have had to learn that the kinds of freedom that we must possess cannot possibly be obtained by violence. As a fellowship, we cannot fight anybody, anywhere, or at any time. This has been proved. We have had directly attacked John Barleycorn. We had lost. Booze fighting had never worked. When we quarreled too much with each other, we got drunk. So we cannot fight anybody, anywhere, at any time, except when we have to sue to retain the right to the original manuscript. Right, Monty? There's that exception, isn't there?
You're funny.
I'm getting gnomed for anybody that's
not seeing any video. There's a gnome here it's actually a gnome that was printed on my son's brand new 3D printer. So that's a whole nother issue, 3D printing.
That's very cool.
But yeah, I mean, it's a trip, the things we can create. Do you with all the turmoil that can go on within the mothership of the 12-step fellowships, let's put it that way. We've talked about issues that were recoverable, right? That we can recover from this mess. We can recover from this oops. Can we recover from some of this stuff that's coming down the pike, you think?
I hate to say this, Monty, and I hate to be a doomsayer, but I think the publication of the Plain Language Big Book is going to split the fellowship in half.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right.
I think half of the people are going to be part of meetings where they don't want the plain language, and half the meetings are going to be places where people use the plain language, and it's going to split our fellowship in half. maybe not. I could be wrong, but I know I belong to a group that's not going to have the plain language on its table.
Right.
You know.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So
Ditto.
so anyway, hence genuine peace will always be a chief ingredient of AA's freedom. But lest none suppose that we shrink from major conflict only because we are afraid. Nowadays, we believe we keep the peace because we love each other. Let's now examine that vital tradition 11. It deals with our public relations. Here is our greatest channel of communication to the alcoholic who still suffers. Tradition 11 reads, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the levels of press, radio, and films. Since this great tradition describes the most important application of AA's principles of anonymity, and because it sets the pitch and tone of our entire public relations policy, nothing can be more critically important. If personal ambitions ever invade our public relations, we shall be badly crippled, perhaps lost altogether. The danger, of course, is the possibility that we may one day recklessly abandon the principle of personal anonymity at the top public level. This possibility arises from the fact that many of us AAs have been, and sometimes still are, possessed by enormous power drives. These are frequently fueled by an almost irresistible craving for money, approval, and public acclaim. My own past history is outstanding in this respect. I can well understand the constant temptation to turn oneself into a public figure. Therefore, I have urged, in season and out, that we AAs maintain our personal anonymity at the top level, no matter what the personal sacrifices might be.
So when he says the top level, is he talking about press?
I think he's talking about the service structure, the delegates. And,
okay.
Yeah, that's what I
Interesting.
think.
So he's not even talking about outside influences like press, radio, and film.
Well, anonymity with press, radio, TV, and films. However, our very top level, the people who run a lot of the stuff in New York if they're alcoholic, they must always stay anonymous. Press, radio, TV, or film.
Those folks specifically.
All of us, but especially, especially the president of Alcoholics Anonymous or something. You know what I mean?
And then here we go again. It's our public relations policy that's based on attraction rather than promotion, not our personal stories. Wow, do we ever get that mixed up?
Yeah. So many people think that tradition and anonymity means secrecy. We must be secret.
Right.
A lot of the Hollywood stars follow this. There are many, many people in Hollywood that have been longtime AA members that you're never going to find out about.
You're not going to know.
Because they do not want anyone saying that they go to meetings. Anyone. Saying, I was at a meeting with so-and-so, and they make that very, very clear. So they're underground. And when people ask them, hey, would you come out and talk about alcoholism, or would you do a fundraiser, for our area intergroup or whatever, they're like, no, I'm anonymous. And that's not what this tradition is really about. This tradition is about the aggrandizement of your last name and your picture in press, radio, TV, and film.
As associated as a member of.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, saying you're a member of. So it's an easy tradition not to break. Monty, you and I don't break it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And people, it's an easy thing not to break.
I got an email the other day again accusing me of breaking. I said, look, I said, find me a one audio or video file from 20 years back to today that I have told you on the air what fellowship I'm a member of. I have never stated it. You might be able to guess, or you might be able to surmise. You may be right, you may be wrong, but I intentionally don't. I'm on him. I'm blah 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 blah. I'm not going to do it. I'm still not. And
so those are the people who don't really understand the tradition or why the tradition is there. A lot of
Right.
times people want to use the traditions to punish people. Those other people, they need to be punished.
Those naughty people.
It's crazy that I'm never accused of it, ever.
Right.
And listen, you can find me pretty easy on social media and stuff like
Sure.
that. But I'm not posting that I'm a member of anything. And if I'm talking about membership, I'm doing it in an anonymous manner without my picture and without my last name.
Yeah.
So,
It's funny though, isn't it, Chris? I mean, if your name is John Smith, but you go around as John S. for long enough, you're going to be known as John S. No one's even people that knew your last name are going to not even remember what it is, and they're going to associate you with John S. And now John S. is as recognizable as John Smith was at one time. You know what I mean? It's kind of funny. I mean,
and when you got to go see him in the hospital and you ask for John S., they look at you funny.
Yeah.
Our chief hope for the future that these appalling urges of ours will be held in restraint by self-discipline, by love of AA, and by firm group and public opinion. These powerful constructive forces all working together have thus far been enough. We pray that they may always prevail. Let's look once more at how immense this temptation really is. A vast communications net now covers the earth, even to its remotest reaches, granting all its huge public benefits. That limitless world forum is nevertheless a hunting ground for all those who would seek money, acclaim, and power at the expense of society in general. Here the forces of good and evil are locked in struggle. All that is shoddy and destructive contests all that is best. So that, Bill says that in a different way. He says the good is sometimes the enemy of the best.
Right.
Therefore, nothing can matter more to the future welfare of AA than the manner in which we use this colossus of communication. He doesn't know anything. He hasn't seen the internet. Used unselfishly and well, the results can surpass our present imagination. Should we handle this great instrument badly, we shall be shattered by the ego demands of our own people, often with the best of intention on their part. Against all this, the sacrificial spirit of AA's anonymity at the top public level is literally our shield and our buckler. Here again, we must be confident that love of AA and of God will always carry the day. Last, in Tradition 12, we see anonymity as the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. This principle and its enormous implications touches every aspect of our lives. Anonymity is humility at work. To maintain the humility of our society, we shall constantly take stock of our temptations and our own defects. The spirit of anonymity calls upon each of us for personal sacrifice in every level of our fellowship's undertakings. Only through such willing sacrifice can we AAs meet our responsibilities to ourselves, to the victims of alcoholism everywhere, and to society as a whole. Here we clearly see that only sacrifice can fulfill responsibility, that only high responsibility can lead to mutual trust, and that only mutual trust can be the foundation for great love. Each of us for the other, and all of us for God. That's a powerful paragraph. In just this spirit, all of those present at AA's 25th anniversary in Long Beach rededicated themselves to the service of AA. They knew that the choice was theirs, and they made it. These were their telling words. By God's grace, we are here assembled in grateful remembrance of the 25th anniversary of our founding of our fellowship. At this meaningful quarter-century mark, we are deeply aware that we stand upon the threshold of a great door which opens wide into our future. Ours can be a destiny of ever-increasing promise and fulfillment. Our faith in this vision has never faltered. But the future would still lack its full use and meaning did it not bring us fresh problems and even acute perils. Problems and perils through which we can grow into true greatness of action and spirit. To these ends we have pledged our lives and fortunes. We here rededicate ourselves to an ever-deepening love of each other. love for the wondrous creation in which we live and serve, and love for its supreme author, God Himself. We now entrust you of AA's distant reaches, you who so well symbolize the unique and loving communication that is ours in this universal fellowship, to carry this message to fellow members everywhere, and most especially to all those others who still know not, and who, God willing, may soon issue out of their darkness into light. Wow. So I wouldn't have expected that was going to be a treatise on the traditions and their spiritual significance.
No,
but
I had no idea.
But that was a well-written article.
And you would like this because it was inspired by something you said. You said on one of our broadcasts, you said, when a member does such and such, is that a member in good standing? No. And so that terminology, member in good standing, stuck with me. So I did it was last Monday's show, I think. What is a member in good standing? What is a 12-step member in good standing? I think I even posted it on Afflicted and Affected Facebook page. And one of the things I said, now these are my opinions. This does not reflect any particular 12-step fellowship. These are my opinions. And the last one was that a member in good standing of a 12-step fellowship that practices the 12 traditions would be to be familiar with and know how to communicate the 12 traditions properly, so as to be an effective gatekeeper for that fellowship. And I said, I know that's going to sound like a control freak thing because I put the word gatekeeper in there, but I'm not talking about being a bleeding deacon. I'm talking about being on the team of a protective force to help preserve this vital thing that has saved thousands of our lives. And if we don't have effective gatekeepers, if you belong to the Boys and Girls Club, if you belong to Rotary, the Boy Scouts of America, you're going to know the bylaws. If you're in good standing, you're going to know the bylaws, you're going to know the boundaries, and you're going to uphold them to the best of your ability.
You're going to uphold them. That's absolutely the heart of being a member in good standing.
That's right. And we need gatekeepers. And I think there's a lot of gates that are going unguarded, brother. I hate to say.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff going on. You know, the in good standing kind of goes back to Akron, the early days in Akron. You know, there's a preamble that comes out of the Akron group that's really interesting to read. I'm sure you've seen it. It's become quite popular. But in it says if you drink, you have lost all status in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah, I remember.
So staying sober is a part of being a member in good standing.
Sure, sure. There was a definition in Merriam-Webster's. It was in good standing, unmovable. And I was thinking, okay, so there's no compromise. There's no room for compromise there. You're standing firm. You're firmly footed. You're not movable. I'm not giving way to popular opinion. I'm staying my ground, right? And
yes.
I think that's important. And those of us who believe that can be accused of being control freaks or whatever. So what? Oh well, okay, call me that. That's fine. I want to do my best to make sure that I protect the very thing that saved my life. Another good show, buddy.
Yeah, excellent, Monty. Now next week we're going to do 2 articles because there's 2 very, very short articles that follow up.
Oh, they are. Yeah.
And so it's going to be a double header.
The Shape of Things to Come and The Far Reaches. Ooh. You know, maybe if we do discover there's life on other planets, they could utilize this too.
Can you imagine?
Oh, my goodness sakes. All right. Well, good deal. All right, buddy. As always, bless you and thank you so much for all your contributions to Take 12 Recovery Radio that you've given us over the years doing all these workshops. It's just so deeply appreciated.
Monty, what an opportunity. And you know, I can't value enough all the work that you've put into Take 12 and the things that you've been doing over the years.
Yeah.
I particularly know how hard it is. I couldn't do it, you know.
Well, I tell you, it's the power of a loving God, man, because I don't know that I would have chose this path. I'm not sure, but I'm very, very grateful to our God and Creator for putting up with all of us scallywags, as we muddle through and carry this message worth depth and weight. All right, listeners, until our next broadcast, this is the Monty'man along with Chris S. and the rest of the Take 12 Recovery Radio family, and we are wishing God's perfect serenity for you.
For more recovery workshops with Chris S. and the Monty'man, visit our website at take12radio.com and click on the Recovery Workshops banner.
This has been a broadcast of Take 12 Recovery Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
This has been a Chicken and a Pig production.
Kitty, 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 kitty. Meow, meow, meow.
Woof, woof.